Okay, welcome everybody. Nice to be here, and I just learned that we are all more or less freshly arrived here, so we do not know very much what's going on, much less than you maybe. And I hope we will have an interesting 1 hour. We want to talk today about how to become a good leader of vocal ensembles, to say it in a very broad sense, and which are mostly amateur singers maybe, but not professional singers. And I'm pleased to welcome on stage today's 3 outstanding experts in the field who have quite different musical backgrounds, which I very much like, and maybe also we'll see that quite different experiences and expectations when it's about dealing with the topic. Let me just briefly introduce you from your right to the left. Emmy Babington, currently acting as Director of Training for the Association of British Choral Directors. I will leave it to Emmy to say a little bit more about her many other activities, but so much Emmy is, despite having a standing leg in the UK, also has a second foothold, so to say, in the US, which is things a particular perspective. Next to Emmy, I welcome Beat Schäfer from Zurich, who has a background as a music educator in schools, but over the years, as far as I see, has been busy in almost any kind of activities which are relevant for today's topic. Welcome, Beat. On my right, on your left, you will see Marlou Vriens from the Vocal Leadership Department program based at CODARTS, the Conservatoire of the Arts in Rotterdam. Marlou will shortly tell you about more what vocal leadership is and what her activities are. Before I give over the floor to Emmy, I just maybe some words about me. Who am I? My name is Stefan Gies. I am the Chief Executive of the Association Européenne des Conservatoires, Académie de Musique et Musikhochschulen, based in Brussels. We are a European umbrella organization, and our members are higher music education institutions all across Europe and beyond. I have been, so to say, also a musician and a teacher and an educator and a director of a higher music education institution in Germany. I ended up in Brussels now, and I think they asked me because I am, so to say, responsible or, let's say, connected to the higher music education sector. That's indeed my field of expertise. And I have a quite good overview over the diversity of the European landscape also. And as it's about educating, so to say, future leaders of choirs or singing ensembles, I may from time to time also, or if you want me to step out from my role as a facilitator, if it's about contributing, I mean, don't be shy to ask me about the perspective from the higher education sector. So we decided to start with short presentations, as I said, in the same order as the panel speakers were introduced to you. And after that, we might have a brief discussion on the panels, but we would also like to open up the question to the discussion to the audience. There's an online audience as well. So don't hesitate to ask questions if you have any questions. So, Emmy, floor is yours.
I have to press it. Correct? Yes. Excellent. Thank you very much for that introduction, Stefan. And thank you to Leading Voices Festival for inviting me today. It's really nice to sit along this lovely panel with Marlou and Stefan and Beat. So I'm just going to talk very briefly about me and what I do, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about the amateur music making scene. So I live and work predominantly in the UK, and my passions are music and dance, Dalcroze, and walking my dog, of course. I trained as a pianist before realising that my calling was to work with choirs. I'm a freelance choral director, and I currently lead a secondary school girls' choir, a mixed adult chamber choir, a workplace choir, which is a law firm choir, actually, and a professional vocal ensemble called Chorus Sound. I'm really pleased to see that the world is moving towards a more diverse and inclusive environment, and last night's concert was a real testament to that. I'm sure many of you were there. But I do feel that we still have quite a long way to go. I'm an advocate for women conductors, and I co-created Wavelength, which is an organisation designed to celebrate and nurture and support women in choral leadership. And as I'm sitting here, I'm looking around at all of these incredible male faces looking down on us, feeling slightly intimidated. I'm fiercely committed to choral music education, and I established a 3-day online course for international musicians called CLP, which stands for Choral Leadership and Pedagogy, and that was just during the COVID lockdowns. I feel very strongly that choral leadership should be recognised and valued in the same way that orchestral leadership is, which is one of the reasons I co-founded the London International Choral Conducting Competition. I also hope to achieve a more robust sense of choral and orchestral equality and to elevate the valuable work of choral leaders, what we do with singers. As the UK ambassador for the newly formed International Choral Conductors Federation, and also through my work as an adjudicator at international choral festivals. As Stefan said, I am the Director of Training for the Association of British Choral Directors, and I've taught for them for over 15 years. We work predominantly with adults who want to improve their choral leadership skills with their own amateur and community choirs. We cover things like teaching skills, vocal technique, gesture, pacing, and a variety of strategies for success in leading singing. I believe we're going to talk about this later, so I wanted to mention my choral conductor training and experience. So firstly, at Huddersfield University, my undergraduate course, I did an elective in choral conducting, and I passed with an A. How fabulous. But I didn't conduct anything. I didn't conduct any music. We just did all of the beat patterns. So that was my first introduction to choral conducting. And then I went on to do a DMA in the USA. And of course, there you might imagine, I was fully immersed in choral music making, conducting and singing pretty much every day for 2 years. And then I also worked at the Royal Academy of Music in London. And there I led a very large oral skills choir. And it was all of the students in the first year at the Royal Academy of Music. So there are over 100 singers. But sadly, that no longer exists because COVID came along and then no one was allowed to sing. So that no longer exists, as I say. But I also led their licentiate diploma in choral conducting, which was an additional elective for the master's degree students. So that was a really interesting thing to lead. The UK is revered for its enviable choral history and legacy. However, there are only 4 institutions, 1 university and 3 conservatoires, where you can study for an MA in choral conducting, and none where you can study for a DMA. There are numerous degrees in community music, although rhythmic conducting has barely made an appearance in the UK yet. Very briefly, just wanted to mention working with amateur choirs. The most important thing for me when working with amateur choirs, of which there are 40,000 in the UK, is that members feel encouraged, motivated and inspired to want to sing. Essentially, they need to feel a part of the whole, but also valued individually, and there needs to be a shared mission of why they're there, why are we singing. For me, if the social side of the rehearsals is healthy and happy, and the leader has the right balance of musical skill, empathy and dynamism, then the singing will be free and expressive. Community singing, for me, is about belonging and social cohesion through music-making experiences, not necessarily about music perfection. And leading choirs, for me, is about empowering and enabling others. That's me done.
Thanks.
My professional background is that I got first a pianist and afterwards a school musician, then followed a diploma of choir conducting, and then one of a church musician. The roots for my enthusiasm for choir music, they go back to the gymnasium, my school, secondary school, with a teacher who could infect me with his enthusiasm to this music. coming out of all these educations, I was, for one part, musician, and on the other part, I built up a singing school for children, infants, 4, 5, 6-year-olds, then 2 children choir, then a choir for mutanten, Steinbruch, then youth choir, following by a church choir, because it was work together with a music school and a church. Then a vocal ensemble, a very good trained vocal ensemble, and after 10 years working there, I realized I have to build up now a senior choir for people who want to make good music and not only sing a little bit in their in Altersheim.
Elderly homes.
Elderly homes. Thank you. With 38, I got a teacher professor in the University of the Arts in Zurich for conducting, and afterwards I was the head of this department with choir and organ and church music. Since 2 years I'm emeritated and retired, and now I'm here. That's in very short the most important station.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Marlou. I suck at introducing myself, so I will try to do my best. But I just want to start with an early memory that I have. My mother used to sing in a choir, and she would always rehearse at home, and we would have a table full of sheet music, and she would have a Walkman on, and she would walk throughout the house trying to memorize all the lines and all the parts that she had to study for her choir. So naturally, I started the choir when I was 5 years old in a children's choir in the town where I grew up, in Tilburg, in the south of the Netherlands. And I started playing the violin. I went to a small opera choir. I went to the youth choir, and I got singing lessons naturally when I was 15, fully grown, like the classical tradition teaches you. So my upbringing was totally classical, and then I crossed over, as we say, or my old conductor says, to the dark side of music, to the rhythmical part of music, when I was 17, starting the music and education program at conductors, Rotterdam, where I currently teach at the moment. So I have been doing music and education because I couldn't decide what was my core business. And after a lot of soul searching, studying, doing all kinds of stuff, doing singing classes, teaching singing classes, having a youth choir, working with original music, composing, I always came back to the same topic, and that would be choir, harmony, singing together, empowering people. Also in the theater parts that I work, there's always choir music involved. You could ask any producer that I work with, it's like, oh, Marlou Vriens. That's kind of the nickname that I have. And I recently graduated at Rama, the Royal Academy of Music in Aalborg and Aarhus in Denmark. I studied with Jim Dausjenu, who is well known for his vocal painting and the intelligent choir method. And currently I work for the vocal leadership program. Vocal leadership is based at conductors Rotterdam. It's kind of, you could say, a sister of Rama. We are inspired by their methodology, and Merel Martens founded the study a couple of years ago. So we are a young education, you could say. We have both courses that are open for everything and everyone who wants to learn the methodology, who wants to be inspired to work with music and to work with choir music and groups. And we also have a master degree, a 2-year master degree at conductors. And our methodology is mostly about playfulness, about unlocking potential both for the choir, the vocal group, and also for the vocal leader. It's actually trying to, with games and with exploration, finding that you can expand your comfort zone. And we try to emphasize that exploration by guaranteeing that we have the social security in which someone can feel at ease, can be included, can be empowered to explore the musical field, the muchness of the vocal field, as we can say. And we are also very well known for our shared leadership. So this means that this is pushing boundaries in the traditional way of a vocal leader and the choir. There can also be leaders within the choir, and we have different methodology for that, different games and different exercises to enable that. And naturally, that's also my core business, what I do if I work one-on-one with someone as a singing teacher, if I work as a composer, writing for theater or writing for vocal groups or choirs, or when I teach a group, it's about social safety. It's about inclusion and about finding that empowerment. Because I think what we should not forget is that we started music because it got to us in a way. So we listened to it and we were mesmerized. We were captivated by a certain sound. And I think that's something that we maybe miss along the way. It's also what we need to have that connection and to feel empowered through music. So when I work, and that's also the question to everything, the question that you included in the introduction is about, the methodology is about fun, inclusion, vocal exploration, and about finding your voice. What do I want to say? What is my identity? Who do I want to be? And what is the story that I want to tell? And then something that I always try to encourage is freedom within the form. So what can you do? What fits you? So we have a form of conducting, we have a form of choral work, we have a form in arrangements. What is yours in this particular form? How can you find freedom within the form? And I think that was it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I have to say you didn't disappoint me at all with my expectations to make up really a broad spectrum of options how to work with singing ensembles, so to say. And came up to my mind when they asked me if I would be available to facilitate this session. The title was already fixed, Shifting Minds in Conductors Training. Indeed, there are two words in which I would like to challenge because I'm not at all fine with them. And I think given, just coming back, what your presentations, I mean, Emmy, you talked about social coherence. You talked about, Marlou, about playfulness, and Beat, you made up the range from 3-year-old children until singing with people in an elderly home. The two terms I would like to challenge is the conductor, because is it good and professional leader also of a professional leader of an amateur choir? Is it necessary a conductor, or is it maybe not something else, a facilitator? I do not know what. And the second is the training. Is it really, do we really prepare well these kind of leaders by training them? Or is it more about enabling them to do some kind of communication with whatever it is? I was in this discussion some time ago where somebody said, why do you talk about training? You're only training seals and ducks and sportsmen, but not singers and not leaders. So, just a question to all of you: is conductor really the right term, or is it not a little bit limited? On the other hand, is training the right action to prepare these people for their job? Whomever wants to say something.
Press the green button. I think with ABCD, what we're finding is some amateur musicians who want to lead choirs are put off by the term conductor because they don't feel they are a conductor. They feel that they are a facilitator or a leader of people who want to sing. So we are coming away slightly from that term conductor, even though essentially for me it is one and the same thing. A choral conductor is a singing leader. But yeah, there are some amateur music makers, music facilitators out there who are slightly put off by that term. But I think the actual practice of working with choirs is very much learnt on the job, isn't it? So you can have skills and really good, fine skills that are shared and disseminated at university level. But the actual reality of it is going out to work with your law firm choir or your 3-year-olds, teaching them Kodai, or, you know, whoever you're working with, a police choir or an NHS choir or a high-level professional chamber choir. I think you need to go out there and do it and learn on the job. And I also think that you need to be a people person. And if you're not about the people, if you're only about, you know, the beat patterns and the music making and not about the social cohesion, the mission, the people, then I don't think you will be the best conductor you could be. Controversial.
In my sense, it's not for me a point of the name. If we say conductor or singing leader or moderator or something else, we have to ask what are the skills and what is in communication important, that music happens between somebody who is responsible with others and for others. And we can see from each side, you want somebody has to have a good ear and has to make listen the group. Somebody has to know how to use the voice. And the best is he can make what they have to do. He has to know something about musicology, or music history for the styles and so on. And he must know, he has to know, how can I get to the goal we want together do? Not only I have to do what they want from me and what I want from them, and we have to put that together. And sometimes it's really the fastest thing, I can show it and come now and we do it. And sometimes it's much better, let them feel what you want and let it come out of the group, and you are only serving on that what happens. Another point, another skill is pedagogical. What to do in which moment, not only to the right, what I have to do now. If you are you are singing too high always, and have to relax the people and not only say down, down, down with the voice or something else. All these methodological things we have to know, and that's in my opinion, it's the same when I work with professionals. Then they have to know how to do. They should know what to do, and I can say slower, faster, higher, and so on, and they do it, but I have to know why it doesn't work, or I can help them doing with my gesture or with that what I do. And in this sense, it's the same, and it's very a high task to work with amateurs, because I have to show them how they come to the point of that what they can if I lead them. Thanks.
Thank you. I totally agree that it's about the discussion and the dialogue between the skills and about the artistry. So it depends on what the choir of the student or the conductor should have. But it's also about a bit of philosophy. And I always feel that we have these discussions among skills. Okay, can I do these things that are asked for me? And we actually forget to ask the question, does it suit the way I want to work with my group, with my target field? So we have a lot of discussions with our students, but as well with our team about how can we facilitate that we inspire them by singing with a good group of people, so they can really dive in deeper musically. And how can we train them to really test out this methodology with their own choir within every level there is? So we try to keep in dialogue with their working field by having video coachings and by talking about it and having like these cases that we talk about and discuss in classes. But I think it's always a juggle to find the right balance between how much methodology should be there, how much artistry should be there, how much vision should be there. And that also comes to the name. I think we chose vocal leadership because it enables us to talk about leadership within the choir, but also from the vocal leader. So it's a versatile term. But to be totally honest, I don't really feel like a conductor, though I did choir conducting. I did a master's degree. I am a choir conductor. But if I work with my own choir, my amateur singers, I don't really conduct. You could say I headbang sometimes. I point my finger like, we trained this. Some transition is coming up right now. Go. And that's my only conducting. And it's not that I don't want to do it, but it's also something that really fits me well and fits the group very well. But if I should do it, I should be able to execute it. And I think that's the balance in how we could work.
Thank you very much. You were all. Yeah, thanks. You were all talking about skills, and I think that's a crucial point. And so I would just go a little bit more in depth. What kind of skills are needed, so to say? And the teaser of these sessions says something about students conducting are trained for conducting or leading professional choirs, but when they are facing an amateur choir, they need completely different skills. There's some kind of assumption in it that they are wrongly educated, or that there might be a cliche in it also. But could you unveil a little bit this kind of tension that is obviously there?
I do think you need a different skill set when you're working with a professional choir as to working with a community choir. And I do think it does come down very much to personality and characteristics when you're talking about the dynamic between conductor and choir. If I were to work with a 100-voice community choir in the same way as I worked with BBC singers, that would just be disastrous. And the same the other way around. So it definitely depends on the people who are in front of you as to what skills you need to bring and what skills you need to draw upon. I think with the professional choir, the level and the expectation and the quality is very different. You go in and you get the job done, you make good music. Whereas with your community choir, it's definitely about the rapport, the pacing, the dynamism, the enjoyment, it's very much a two-way thing.
Yes and no. Yeah, in my opinion. When I'm working with professionals, and I can do the same with a big choir of amateurs, but with total other methods and another level of that what I'm doing. Because when I can work with them in a way that they are enthusiastic to do this job, it's the same as I do with amateurs, because I do something that they are enthusiastic about after or with my work together. And they are the same years that are the same plan or what I want to create and so on, but they are maybe a total other language. I speak otherwise with my 5-year-old boy or with my 22 years old daughter, or with my wife, or with my grandmother. So for the levels of age you speak about. And in some case, I can reach the result with new movements, and sometimes I can reach the goal with a very clear, short comment. And for me, a good conductor or a good leader, or how you will say that, the type of profession, he knows a lot of things, and he not only knows, he is common with a lot of things and can do that in the right moment, what is now possible. And the problem for the education, because it is one of my tasks and one of my works I had to do, the problem is when we start too early with the work with professionals, when there is no base before for all these things, then I learn to say faster, slower, and so on. They do it, and I cannot realize that I don't have an understanding of that, what they have to do, and what I am doing with them when I say, because it's not a machine. A choir is not a machine. I can put more, less, and so on. And when the best of my students who can work with children, with an amateur choir, with a profi choir, and so he goes in a master class and works with a good group. And there is somebody who is not so gifted, but he knows to give short comments. In the first moment, it sounds not so different. It's a little bit different because the singers, they want not to sing extra nasty. You understand? They are musicians. And then you have to be a good teacher to see the difference and to look what they have. And the danger of this way we can see more and more to work early with professionals is that there are missing tools you need when you too early start to work with professionals. That's my opinion. I think it's very important that a student also have an experience with professionals. It's a point of balance and of the time when I'm doing what with ensembles.
If I understand you correctly, you're a little bit supporting the thesis that whatever choir you will conduct or lead later, or it's a children choir or an amateur choir, there should be necessarily a good professional basis, a professional in terms of artistry level, in terms of musical knowledge, musical know-how, that right? And if not, you will not be able to, let's say, to develop any kind of skills you need if you work with other choirs. Is that correct?
Say the last.
I mean, if you don't have the professional basis in terms of musical knowledge, artistic quality, you will not be able to tackle whatever choir you work in.
It's not my opinion that the knowledge has to be in the same way, but the understanding of what you are doing and the feeling and the listening, the singing, the body feeling, that has to be the same. Maybe a conductor who has to conduct each month 2 different programs, he has to be very fast, he has to know a lot of things that he can manage that. And somebody who works with children choirs, he doesn't have to make an analysis of a symphony or something else. Of course not. But it has to be a very good base for both. And I ask myself if the base is good enough, and when it's not good enough, why? Because we are doing the force or the wrong thing, or too early or too late something.
Marlou, would you agree with that? I mean, is there a conflict between what Beat said and your concept of fun and playfulness?
Yeah, I just wanted to compare it with a map, actually. If we're talking about a route, you're walking somewhere, you have a destination in mind. Sometimes when you take the map, you will find that you have another route, but you have the same destination. So maybe I could, use it as a metaphor to have when with certain groups or with certain target groups, you have a different route to your destination than you would have with a professional hiker. So if you have a professional hiker, he or she will know the way, where to go. It might be faster than a bunch of people that are just, out seeing nature and being like, oh, this is a beautiful road, let's go there. But you still have the same destination. I believe, I kind of see the struggle as well. And I kind of agree, but I'm also trying to consider that maybe from, if we have 2 years in a master program, that we have the first year to explore all the methodology out there, all the tools out there, all the skills. We just want to make them prepared to fly wherever they go. And then in the second year will be a great case to actually focus more on the area that they want to explore more. So their expertise. And for someone that could be youth choir and children's choir, and for someone else that could be an all-female choir. And that's also, I think, the balance stuff, but also the discussion is what is the education for? What is the aim of the education? What is the identity of the education? So a big topic, actually. I hope I answered your question a little bit.
You did. I'm educated as a string player, as an orchestra musician, but in very long time ago, I was also teaching in schools. I did a little bit of choir conducting or choir leading. And what I found out very quickly when I was working with school choirs was that it was often very, or almost always, let's say, more efficient, also in terms of artistic quality, whatever, to leave out scores from the very beginning. I did not use scores. I mean, I used scores, but the singers did not see any kind of sheet music. And which was basically in contradiction to what I was taught. But it worked out quite better. And I don't know if you share this experience, and if so, why, what is therein, so to say, or what was the reason why I had, maybe you can explain my experience from a very long time ago, why it was more efficient not to use sheet music when...
I used to work with a youth choir, and I used to sing in the youth choir. We were a classical youth choir where I was singing, but she would also keep the sheet music away when she would introduce the music. So we would really pay attention to what was going on in the music and to really be mesmerized by the sounds of it. Mostly we would do big works like the St. Matthew Passion. We would do Britten. So it's kind of complex music, but still, because we weren't introduced by the sheet music, and we were all able to read our sheet music because we had solfege every week, so we were actually taught how to read sheet music. It was better if we were not distracted by the notes, because we could really get into the music. I sometimes introduce pieces as well without sheet music. So I have an amateur group that doesn't read sheet music at all, but it's kind of like a guideline. So it's kind of like a graphic notation. So they know when to go up, they know when to pause, they know when to go down, and that's actually all they know about it. But sometimes they get distracted from the intention and the message of the music. So I think that is also a balance of what you want to achieve, if it works or not.
I think it's really interesting what you were saying, Marlou, before about your journey of training, which sort of feeds into this, whether we should sing from scores or not. I think in the States, there's very much a clear journey and where you start and where you end up. I trained in Texas, and so many of the schools there already have choral music programs. So many will do a master's in choral music education, and they have Kodai, they have a full diet of Kodai solfa all the way through. And then they will go into an MA in choral conducting. But the pathway is very clear. In the UK, it's very random, incredibly random. There's no one stream. And then, of course, you have the colleges and choristers who are literally brought up. Someone puts a score in their hand and that you have to sing it, even if you've never read a score before and you don't know what it means. And that's sort of the chorister diet, the expectation to read a score. And there's no training, there's no Kodai, there's no solfa, there's nothing to underpin. And of course, then we've got the organist going into conducting because they're the organist and they can play and they're the best musician in the room, so then the organist stands up to conduct the choir. So I just wanted to mention that from the previous topic about in the UK, certainly there isn't one single strand that people follow. It's quite broad and random and vague. But what was the other thing I was going to mention about sight reading? Yeah, I think that's in and of itself a fantastic skill to be able to teach a choir something without the music. So if you know it well enough and you can teach it well enough, they will absorb it. And I think that's a really, really essential skill. And I do feel that there are some conductors who don't have that skill because they are used to getting the score open, reading the score and expecting the choir to just be able to sing it. So I do think the whole broad spectrum of the skill set needs to be there.
Yeah. I agree with you too, of course. That's very important. I see that there are music that when you have scores, you can go very fast because they can see what it is, perhaps a little bit up and down, or very clear, the intervals. But there are also things that were much easier if you can copy that by ear. Perhaps rhythmical things, jazz things, and so on. Because they are very complicated noted, but the groove is coming bit from the feeling. And when they are counting, da, 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 di, da, 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 then perhaps they are reading and it's very clear, but it is not the sense of what we want to do. And my problem is in working with choirs for a long time to get the levels together. It's very difficult to have very good sight readers because in short time they can see what it is. Perhaps they use the body not so good because it is always going here, and somebody who sings free would sing with the other sound, but he doesn't know the melody, and then that is drifting out. The good singers for sight reading, they go in a choir where they can read with the scores in a short time the music, and how to get these qualities together. Perhaps with an audition in a choir. When you do that not, then it's a concurrence and a Nivellierung of the whole thing. And I think that's both had a justification to sing without score or with score. The best is you need the score to learn fast. And then you memorize what you are doing, and you learn to stand free and sing like in a competition. Normally today, in competitions, the choir sings by heart. Also very difficult pieces.
Thank you very much. I think it's time to open up the discussion to the audience. You were so far very calm and patient. I hope you went on board. But before opening the discussion, let me just remind two things. The first one is we were so far a little bit generalizing, talking about amateur choirs or amateur singers, but should still have in mind that the spectrum is quite wide. If you can't compare, so to say, a children choir in a church context with, let's say, an amateur choir of 15 years old, people who grow up with Sting and Michael Jackson. And so feel free to address your questions or your comments, not only in the general way, but also to particular sections, if you want to. And the second thing is, don't feel, so to say, obliged to repeat or to comment the topics we were discussing. We can have with completely new topics as well. The floor is yours.
Thank you. I'm reading the topic of the roundtable, so conductors training. I'm sorry for the words. I would like your opinion about the evolution of the repertoire and the conductor's training. I mean, I studied in a conservatoire, which many countries use that name. Some other use academy, it's not a better name. It tells by itself what it is. Conservatoire. So conservative. And today those institutions still exist, and I go to the exam of the students getting a master degree on conducting, and they use the same repertoire. And of course contemporary music, but serious music. And nowadays, many amateur choirs they like to go in other repertoire, including world music, modern music, pop music, jazz, things like gospel, things like that. And I don't see in the school that I know, I don't know the whole world, but that the program is adapted to the future job of those conductors. So what is your opinion about the future, and how are we going to get out of this conservative old-fashioned training? I don't mean that we have to leave it. I mean, there are still classical choirs who need classical conductors who studied how to beat, and the pedagogy is another thing. But how are we going to include these new repertoire in the choral world? Because they existed before, but they were not involved in the choral world. Now they are. So how are we going to evolve to that in the conductors training in the institutions? That's my question. What is your opinion about that? I know that Rama is, of course, an exception in the picture, but what about this? Yeah, you got it.
Thank you for asking that. I did actually send out an email to all of my colleagues who work in the one university and the 3 conservatoires in the UK to ask them about their training. So at the Royal Academy, it is actually sacred music. And so the repertoire doesn't change. They work with BBC singers, and they are encouraged to have their own amateur choirs in London and also do their training at the same time. The Royal Welsh College of Music and Drama is similar. So they again are sticking with similar repertoire, but the conductors are encouraged to have and work with community amateur choirs while they're doing their training. So I think what they would say is that the repertoire that they're training on is of high level, is of conservatoire level, and yet they are learning on the job peripherally during that time. I spoke to Simon Halsey at length about this as well. You can imagine he had an awful lot to say. So Birmingham University, the students that come to Birmingham University generally come for Simon, depending on where he's been in the world, and then they decide to come and train with him. And it's mostly symphonic repertoire because they have an association with the CBSC, the City of Birmingham Symphony Chorus. And so it's very much symphonic repertoire. However, all of the students will have a choir in the university, whether it's an upper voice, lower voice, or a community choir, or they have a workplace choir, which is the university choir. They call it a workplace choir. So the thinking is that they're still going to get a very high level of training, and yet the students who are doing that symphonic chorus training or whatever, they are going to be working with other choirs that are doing world music and upper voice repertoire, lower voice repertoire. I'm not so sure about the jazz, gospel, not world music, but VOPA, vocal painting side. I don't think the UK is catching up that quickly. But yeah, I think that's where we're at in the UK. But I agree, it needs to change significantly.
Yeah. I think it's very different. We cannot say in Switzerland nor in Germany, that's the method, how it will be done. It's so different. I can tell you from Zurich. We have decided 20 years ago that we will have not 2 professors with their classes. We have 1 class with 2 professors. We got the money to give some hours per week together. There are 2 different conductors who are working with the students. They are also a little bit different in their way to work. We sit together and we make a reader for the next season, and there's always very hard stuff, very demanding pieces in. There are very simple things in it, folk songs. There are always a repertoire of the pop jazz repertoire, and it's very broad, the literature, and in each session, in each season, there's also a piece with improvising patterns or improvising parts and so on. And the special thing is, in the conducting group are the Bachelor 1 and the Master 4. Also the whole range of conductors are there. My chief, Eidenbenz, he said, how can you do that? That's too simple for the best, and for the weaks it is too hard to make all. And they said, nada, that's not so. Somebody who is very good and very experienced has to conduct a very simple piece, and he thinks, oh, I can do that fast and so on, and you see how difficult that can be. And of course, as a teacher, I know that I cannot the same thing get out of a student who is in the second semester than of one who is in the 8th semester or something else. And I can give a part of that, and they learn from each other, and that's a very good dynamic, and we have also a very good response of that from the students. When they get out, everybody writes, who was your professor? We have our students in our single lessons, but they always write both down, because the input is important, because from two sides they are always a little bit different, and me and my colleague, we are working in the same way of the aim, and that's important. And so I think there are possibilities to broaden up the repertoire. That was the question.
Just maybe allow me to step out for a moment from my role as a facilitator, because I would step into my role as a representative of the Higher Music Education Association. I think you are right, and we are working hard on that, and it is an everyday challenge. And what I sense in all these discussions all across the different countries, which, by the way, are tackling the topic in a diverse way, is that there is a great openness to open up to new repertoires from the senior management level. But there is a kind of the system, the structure of the institutions is a little bit strengthening, and if you say the term of conservatoire, the conservative point of the conservatoire is mostly the teachers and also the students, I have to say, not because they are not ready to change or not able to change, but there is a tendency to repeat what they know and what they learned. And there are 2 points, and I always say, if there's a trigger point or if there's a screw you can turn, it might be the entrance examination, because the entrance examination, we expect them to have certain skills, and then you already leave out those who don't have these kind of skills in need, and that strengthens the system. And there was one thing which I was I'm repeatedly, I experience. I'm old enough to experience the time when I studied. There was no jazz and pop at all at my higher music education institutions, but I experienced the time when the jazz came in. And what happened when the jazz came in is the jazz adapted to the conservatoire system, and not the conservatoire adapted to jazz. And that's, so to say, they started to write down what they were reading. They came up with music theory, with a written than they ever had before. And this is, I think, the main point you should change. And I think now you talked about inclusivity, and there's a big political pressure, I would say. I wouldn't call it pressure, because I think I would do it voluntary, but there's a movement to bring in more genres. Also, migrant music, folk music, electronic music, whatever you want. And I think if you bring them in the same way as you brought in jazz music, that will not work out. And I think that's partly an answer to your question.
Even though I work in the rhythmical part, we also have our classics that we work with, where we open up for students to work with their own arrangements or compositions. And I try to challenge them to also find repertoire that would not be mandatory for their choir or for something that we would enable. So it's always, also in the rhythmical part, it's also something that we have to keep open to, that there is still a great variety in music and that we should embrace it instead of, pushing it away. So that's my short answer.
More questions? Yeah.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. A quick question. I'm just intrigued. What kind of feedback do you get from the singers and the choirs you conduct as conductors? What kind of feedback from the singers? And how does that help you as a conductor? I'm just generally interested in how healthy the relationship is two-way between conductors and choirs.
I have my amateur female group that I work with. I don't have the title conductor there or vocal leader, but I'm a vocal coach. So I work with them as a coach, getting into the music, but they decide their own identity and the story that they want to tell. I compose original music. I put the frame out there, but they decide how they want to sing it with what interpretation. And we have a lot of dialogue. We have a lot of discussions about what do we want to do. They ask me for advice when they are like, we have to have new repertoire. Where do we find it, or how can we do that? And we are actually very, you could say, like at the same level, talking about the flow of our rehearsal, the way that we are rehearsing, where we are working towards. So I think to say that I do a lot with their feedback, and I hope that I can sometimes contribute with my feedback to them, but they are actually the behind the wheel, you could say, and I try to help them, to guide them throughout the way.
One more question. Oh, two more. We allow two more questions, but then I think time runs out.
Thank you. I'm just wondering if you are working on organizing like an undergraduate course in a university or in a conservatoire for a general music degree or something like that, and perhaps you can only fit into it one module on choral music, choral leadership, choral conducting, whatever it is. And so that means one semester, that means 10 weeks, maybe 2 hours a week. So you have 20 hours to basically impart as much as you can about choral leadership on these young people before sending them out into the world to become music teachers, music practitioners, choral leaders themselves. If you can only fit in one module on choral leadership into a music degree, what do you think are the most important skills to teach on that? Like what are your priorities if you were to devise, if you were only given basically 20 hours of teaching, 20 teaching hours in an undergraduate course, what would be your priorities in teaching those students?
You just want us to give you all the answers, don't you, Kevin? I'm kidding. Shall I go? For me, being able to teach a song by ear, call and response, how are you going to make the music happen? So that's probably number one, using your ears, as Beat was saying. Being able to teach something, being able to teach it well, being able to bring in part singing and canon singing, the sing for pleasure route, basically. That would be number one for me. 2, gestures, as long as you've got some beat patterns that mean something. 2, 3, and 4, that's all you need. Cueing and cutting off, just the really, really basic gestures. Those are the 2 things for me. I'm sure my colleagues will say other things.
It just, do you want to?
I think that the connection between breathing, singing, and showing something with the movements, that is a stress I put on that, because it's not only a sign, it's not only now to do, not only to listen. That's one thing that is important to me. And then I hope I have the overview of all, and we have with each student also a single lesson, not only in the group. And then you have to work with this person that are a little bit too stiff, and this is a little bit flattery, and this little cannot hear, and so on. And we have to be individual.
Time runs out. One last question, brief question, short answer, please.
Yes, thank you. Talking about skills for a conductor,
not only music repertoire and technique, but I don't know what happened with the psychological side of a person, because when a young student comes out to work with a group of people, they know how to do this, they know how to sing and what to say to the people, but there are other situations in a group with amateurs choirs you need to solve. And it depends of your personality, how you grew up as a person, actually, and how to manage with that. So my question is, there is like how to work with people, or the social part of this work in the conservatories in the world or academies. How in my time it wasn't so.
Maybe Marlou, the last answer for.
I will try to answer it briefly. Because social security is very important. If you don't have a safe room, safe space for people to be in, you can. Yeah, my motto should be like, together everybody achieves more. Teamwork makes the dream work. So you need to have a safe space. You need to connect with people. And I think that should also be part of the curriculum, to how to enable, how to do teamwork, how to connect with people, how to create a safe space for everyone to be in. So that was the shortest answer.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much to everybody. You see that we could continue for another half an hour. That's not a bad sign. Thank you very much for the panel speaker, for your inspiring contributions. Thank you to the audience for your patience and for your good questions. And enjoy the rest of the conference. Thank you.